The Golden Fish, a Chinese folktale. In China, along the banks of the Yangtze River, lived a poor fisherman named Guan with his wife. One day, at the break of dawn, Guan set off up the river. He anchored his boat near the reeds and cast his line. But fortune seemed to have turned its back on the fisherman that day. In vain, he changed the bait, moving his boat from one spot to another. The worm remained untouched. There was no catch to be had. Just as the sun began to sink low in the west, Guan suddenly saw his float tremble and vanish beneath the water. Cautiously, the fisherman pulled the line, drew his catch closer to the boat, and then gave a sharp tug. Thrashing and struggling on the hook was a large, uncommonly beautiful fish. 3 golden plumes shimmered on its back. Guan trembled with joy. As he carefully removed his precious catch from the hook, many pleasant thoughts raced through his mind. I'll sell this fish, buy rice for a week, repair the fancy, his humble hut, and perhaps even get my wife a tortoise-shell comb. But the moment Guan freed the fish from the hook, it immediately spoke to him in a human voice. "Release me, and you will not regret it," the fish said. "I am the queen of this river. In gratitude, take my 3 golden plumes, bury the first in the ground, drown the second in your pond, and place the third on the sleeping mat where your wife rests. Do this, and you will be happy. And one more thing I must tell you. Your happiness will last only as long as the gleam of gold does not blind your eyes. Set me free, and remember my words." Guan pondered for a moment, then plucked the 3 golden plumes from the fish's back and released his catch back into the river. When Guan reached home, his wife met him. A warm fire was blazing in the hearth, and the water in the cauldron was boiling furiously. "Where is the fish?" his wife asked. Guan sighed and recounted his unusual adventure to her. "Well then," said Guan's wife, "it looks like we'll have to go to bed without supper." But before retiring for the night, the fisherman went out into his garden and buried 1 feather near the pond's edge. The 2nd feather he tossed into the pond. The 3rd, Guan placed on the sleeping mat beside his slumbering wife. In the morning, the fisherman woke to his wife's joyful cries. He opened his eyes and saw a lovely little girl with golden eyes lying beside his wife. Guan pressed his daughter to his chest and carried her out to the garden, hoping the bird song would delight the newborn's ears. Upon reaching the pond, the fisherman stopped in amazement. In the exact spot where he had buried the feather the previous evening, a golden lily sprout had grown. Seeing the sprout, the little girl smiled and reached out her tiny hands towards it. But Guan was even more astonished when he looked at the pond. A tiny golden fish was darting about in the clear water, and again, the little girl smiled and stretched out her hands towards the fish. Guan and his wife settled into a peaceful and joyful life. Happiness never left their fancy from that day on, and the fisherman always returned with a plentiful catch. Guan's daughter grew, becoming more beautiful with each passing day. She was always cheerful and amazed the neighbors with her quick wit and gentle nature. And alongside the girl, the sprout matured and reached for the sun. It had now blossomed into a magnificent lily. Golden leaves grew on the golden stem, and golden flowers were in bloom. Meanwhile, in the pond, the tiny golden fish had long since become a large one. And here was a strange thing. If Guan's daughter was ever saddened by something, the lily's leaves would begin to wilt, and the fish would swim to the surface of the mirror-like pond and beat the water loudly with its tail. 16 springs flew by quickly, and Guan's daughter grew into a young woman. She was so beautiful that even the swallows would pause in mid-flight to admire her. The girl was never idle. She prepared meals, mended her father's nets, wove cloth, hulled rice in the field, and cultivated rare flowers in her small garden. Before long, the sons of the neighbours began to visit the fisherman's hut, each one asking for Guan's daughter's hand in marriage. But the girl's parents refused them all. They simply couldn't bear the thought of parting with their beautiful daughter. One day, a fleet of multicoloured junks moored near the shore where the fisherman's fancy stood. Guan's small garden filled with a crowd of richly dressed young men. They lined up on the shore, placed their hands over their chests, and bowed low before the man seated in the first boat. This was an important, elderly man. He was wearing magnificent silk robes. When this man stepped onto the shore, he walked up to Guan and bowed to him respectfully and deeply. Guan instantly understood that this noble, wealthy man had come to ask for his daughter's hand. "We do not wish to part with our daughter, esteemed sir," said Guan. "She brought prosperity to our home. She is our joy and our comfort." The rich man smirked and shouted to his servants, "Bring the white sack from my junk." Immediately, 4 giants, straining under the weight of their burden, brought a large white sack and threw it at the fisherman's feet. The rich man pulled a sword from his belt, swung it, and sliced open the sackcloth. Silver coins poured out of the sack with a ringing sound. "This is yours," the rich man said haughtily. "In return, give me your daughter in marriage." "Ah, good sir," Guan exclaimed. "Why did you ruin the sackcloth?" "It's worth money, too." He bowed and added, "My daughter does not wish to leave her elderly parents." The rich man smirked again and again yelled in a terrifying voice, "Bring the red sack from my junk." And instantly, 8 giants tossed an enormous red sack at the fisherman's feet. Once more, the rich man pulled his sword and cut the sackcloth. A broad stream of gold dust poured out of the sack. It glittered so blindingly that everyone, except the rich man, squeezed their eyes shut for a moment. The old fisherman forgot the words of the River Queen. He could not tear his gaze away from the sparkle of the gold. And so, Guan gave his only daughter with the golden eyes to the rich man. The solemn wedding was celebrated that very day, and when the sun was finishing its journey, the rich man took his young wife away. Once again, Guan and his wife lived in solitude. They missed their daughter greatly. The old fisherman no longer went out to fish. All the housework was done by servants, for Guan was now immeasurably rich. All day long, he sat in the corner of his fancy, counting and weighing his gold. Soon the fisherman became so lazy that he even stopped strolling along the path in his garden. One day, when Guan woke after his midday nap, a servant entered the room, bowed, and said, "Oh, master, I water the lily every day, but its leaves are wilting." Guan went into the garden and saw that the lily's leaves were faded, and its flowers had sadly drooped their heads. In vain, the fisherman and his wife watered the lily with clear water, tied up the stem, and shielded it from the wind with mats. Day by day, the lily withered more and more, and finally, a sorrowful morning arrived. Stepping into the garden, Guan saw the golden lily crumpled and lying on the ground. Its leaves and flowers were grey and lifeless. The fisherman rushed to the pond for water, and here new sorrow awaited him. In the clear, mirror-like water, the golden fish was frantically darting about. It would dive to the very bottom, leap to the surface, and strike the water with its fins. "Woe to us, woe!" exclaimed Guan's wife. "Surely some misfortune has befallen our daughter. The gold has brought us disaster." Before she could finish her words, the golden fish poked its head out of the water and spoke in a human voice. "Your daughter is a prisoner of the King of the Yellow Sea. It was he who blinded your eyes with the sparkle of gold, and you mistook a dragon for a man." Oh, how the poor old couple wept. In his grief, Guan clawed at his own face, and his wife fainted onto the grass. And then the golden fish took pity on them, surfaced again, and said, "Prepare a boat and a silk cord, as long as the distance from the ground to the peak of the highest mountain." The fisherman followed this instruction, and the fish then commanded, "Put your wife in the boat and give her one end of the cord. Securely tie the other end to your own hand. After that, set sail for the Yellow Sea." Everything was done as the fish commanded, and when the boat stopped in the middle of the Yellow Sea, the head of the golden fish appeared at its stern. "Grasp my tail," cried the fish. Guan plunged into the water and clutched the fish's tail with both hands. The water foamed and churned above his head. A roaring sound filled his ears, and breathing became harder and harder. But no one on earth could have made the fisherman release the fish's tail now. After all, he had thrown himself into the abyss to save his daughter. Guan sank deeper and deeper until he finally stepped onto the ocean floor. He walked for a long time, following the fish across the rocky bottom, covered with unknown plants, until he saw a massive crystal palace. This was the dwelling of the Lord of the Sea. The fisherman pressed his face against the crystal wall and began to watch what was happening inside the Sea King's palace. Suddenly, he couldn't help himself and cried out. In a large, beautiful hall, seated on a pearl throne, was his daughter. The Lord of the Yellow Sea sat beside her. Guan's daughter was dressed in a gown made of tiny pearls, a coral crown adorned her head, and an amber necklace encircled her neck. But oh, how sad she looked, with what longing the poor captive gazed around her. And the Sea King never took his eyes off her. A forest of green seaweed stood bristling on his head. The king was wrapped in strange fabrics that seemed to envelope him like currents of water, changing colours every second. Forgetting himself, Guan lunged towards the entrance, but he was instantly blocked by two enormous squid that guarded the palace. The golden fish then struck them with such force with its nose that both sentries were stunned for a full minute. That was all the time Guan needed to slip into the palace. The fisherman had to pass through 100 palace rooms before he reached the throne room. And in every room, he encountered the king's courtiers. There were huge sea urchins, vicious sharks, and lazy whales. Herds of sea cows and droves of seahorses grazed among the seaweed. Finally, Guan crossed the threshold of the throne room. Seeing her father, the unfortunate girl stretched out her slender, pale arms to him. But the Lord of the Seas also managed to spot the fisherman. He seized his trident and hurled it at Guan with terrifying force. In an instant, the golden fish shielded the fisherman with its body. The trident slid off its golden scales without leaving even a scratch. The golden fish slammed its tail against the crystal wall of the palace, and the fragments of the wall shattered and flew in all directions with a ringing sound. And then thousands upon thousands of golden fish surged into the palace. Leading them all was a fish of unprecedented size. Guan recognized her as the queen of the Yangtze River. Before the Lord of the Sea could receive help, the fish had already surrounded his throne. But Guan did not wait to see how the battle between the River Queen's forces and the Sea Lord would end. He grabbed his daughter and gave the cord a tug. Instantly, Guan and his daughter began to rise. It was Guan's elderly wife, winding the long cord onto the oar with her last strength. When the fisherman surfaced with his daughter right next to the boat, the poor woman nearly fainted with joy. The fisherman immediately took hold of the oars. They had to hurry home. A storm was rising on the sea, and no wonder. Storms always rage on the sea, when the mighty golden fish and the wicked lord of the sea are fighting below. When the happy family stepped onto their shore, they all looked upon the golden lily. It was once again fresh and vibrant. New leaves and flowers had appeared on its stem, and a new miracle awaited them in the fisherman's house. The sack of gold had turned into a sack of ordinary sand. But this did not sadden anyone. They were all happy and cheerful because they loved each other and were together again. What more is there to tell you? How should this true tale end? Perhaps with this: even to this day, there are fierce storms on the Yellow Sea. Surely the wicked Sea King still lives and continues to blind greedy people with his gold.